Hello there, this is AD Robles, and you're listening to AD on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. All right. Well, before we begin today, let me just say this. If you have not considered doing so, please consider becoming a Fight, Laugh, Feast Network club member. Use the show code ROBLES, R-O-B-L-E-S. Use the show code ROBLES, R-O-B-L-E-S, and support the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. We are building a media empire. I agree with Andrew Torbo. We need to make a Christian economy. We need to build a Christian empire just in general, in every area of life, applying God's commands and loving our neighbor as ourselves and all of that kind of thing. But we're doing it in the media space. And so if you want to be part of that and support this and continue helping us grow the network, please consider doing so. Use the show code ROBLES, that's R-O-B-L-E-S. Now, speaking of media empires, I want to talk about Rush Limbaugh. Now, one of the things I find funny about being on YouTube and doing a podcast and stuff like that is I'll often get insulted. And I get insulted in a variety of different ways, but my most favorite is when somebody tries to insult me but accidentally ends up giving me a compliment. And I remember the very first time this happened, it was someone said that I was like James White, and they had intended it as an insult, as a dig. But I, of course, was taking it as a compliment. I love James White. I love his content. I love his style and all that kind of stuff. And similarly, people have said that I'm a Rush Limbaugh wannabe. Now, there's two things funny about that. Number one, I don't take that as an insult. And number two, I've very rarely listened to Rush Limbaugh. In fact, I bet you if you totaled up all the amount of minutes that I've listened to Rush Limbaugh in my entire life, it would probably be less than 10 hours. And that's nothing against the guy. Every single time I've listened to him, I've enjoyed it. I've always appreciated his style, and I've always appreciated his content as well. I don't agree with everything he says, but I like a lot of what he says. So people try to insult me, but they end up complimenting me. I appreciate that. I like the irony there. But funny story about Rush Limbaugh. Let me just tell you a little bit about old AD back before he was as sharp as he is now. But anyway, I grew up in Connecticut mostly, and then my senior year of high school, I moved to Maryland in the D.C. area, Montgomery County, actually. And living in Montgomery County, Maryland, I knew a lot of liberals. I knew a lot of progressives, and pretty much everyone in the D.C. metro area, even if they're not liberal and progressive, they speak weasel. Very well. Everyone's trying to nuance things and beat around the bush. It's like Big Eva on steroids. Like everyone speaks weasel, and I just got so used to that my senior year of high school, and then in college I went to the University of Maryland, studied government and politics, and then I lived in Maryland a few years after college as well before I went to New York. And so I got very used to hearing and interpreting people speaking weasel, and also speaking weasel myself. I worked at the Board of Elections as an election judge recruiter after college, and that was a cool job. I got to see how an election worked behind the scenes and stuff like that. It was very interesting. I remember thinking how it seemed like way too easy to manipulate an election back then. But anyway, so I was working at the Board of Elections, and I remember at the time I was not a Christian. I was very hungover one day, and I decided to take an early lunch, and I was going to take a long lunch. And so I was just kind of sitting in my car and just kind of resting and trying to recover from this hangover that I had. And I'll never forget it. I was eating a Quiznos sandwich. It was the Steakhouse beef dip, I believe, where they had the au jus sauce on the side. And my thought process was, I really liked Quiznos at the time. And my thought process was that au jus sauce would probably be very rejuvenating, give me the vitamins and minerals I needed to recover from the hangover. And so I'm eating that, and I'm looking for something on the radio in my car to listen to. And I stop at this station, and I hear a guy talking about, I think it was immigration. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure the reason I stopped is because it was about immigration, and it was specifically about Latinos. And this guy was talking about immigration and Latinos in a way that was very confusing to me because it was super straightforward. Like, he wasn't trying to nuance things to death. He wasn't trying to pussyfoot around the issue. Like, he was talking directly to the heart of the issues. And some of it I agreed with, some of it I wasn't sure if I agreed with, but the style, I'll never forget, like, thinking, like, wow, like, this guy's he's just getting after it. He just went there kind of thing, you know? And I was just so unused to it. And I was just like, well, who is this guy, right? I didn't know who it was. Honestly, I didn't recognize his voice. I had not listened to Rush Limbaugh, not even one time, but as it turned out, it was Rush Limbaugh. I heard on the what are those, the bumpers or whatever they're called. So Rush Limbaugh, so I listened to him for that hour. I took the long lunch, and I got back to my desk. And the job that I had was a very easy job, and I was able to accomplish that job a lot quicker than the hours I was allotted to do it. So I used to waste a lot of time on the internet at that job as well. Very not ethical to do in any way, but just like I said, I wasn't a Christian at the time, so I didn't really care. So I spent the next part of my day, the next half of my day, on RushLimbaugh.com, and I was reading transcripts. His articles are just transcripts of his show, basically. I was reading all kinds of stuff, and I'm looking at this guy. This guy looks like Tony Soprano. I'm like, this guy, he sounds awesome. He's got interesting opinions, and he looks like Tony Soprano. Like, why have I not heard about this guy? And the truth is, I had heard about this guy. But I had a very negative opinion about Rush Limbaugh. I had heard he was like a Neanderthal. I had heard he was like a backwards, like a bigot. I had heard that he's just an idiot. He's just a low IQ moron, an idiot. I had heard all these things. I had heard the name Rush Limbaugh, but all I heard was this negative propaganda about how he's just a backwards Neanderthal bigot. And then I hear him, and I'm like, he's not that at all. And so that was like the first time I realized that a lot of the propaganda, like a lot of what I hear about people, isn't actually true. And so like that it was kind of like the first time I knew that. And it's like, I was like, man, this guy's interesting. And so I didn't, for some reason, I never really got into him. Like I liked his content. Every time I heard it, I found it interesting. So it's not a knock on the guy at all that I never really got into him and never really listened to him religiously or anything like that. But it was so amazing to me at that time, like the difference between what I had heard about Rush Limbaugh and then what he actually was like, at least on the radio. I couldn't believe it. It could not have been a more of a contrast between what I had expected about Rush Limbaugh than what he actually was. He was excellent, it's from everything I heard. And that was an interesting kind of juxtaposition, you might say. And actually, I never forgot that. And even to this day, I'm very skeptical when people who are experts at speaking weasel have something to say about somebody, or they want to say how problematic so-and-so is. I never forgot that whole situation with Rush Limbaugh, how wrong everybody was about him. Nowadays, you hear, nowadays, like if Big Eva and like CNN are against something, like I'm almost like automatically for it because the chances of it actually being good are very high. Now, that's not a way to live. You don't want to be reactive in that way completely. But I'll tell you right now, if Big Eva wants me to be more interested in what someone has to say or what someone's doing on content, then they need to say how problematic it is. Because I know that Big Eva is very similar to the people that I used to be friends with back when I lived in Maryland. They speak weasel. They speak propaganda. They speak in slogans. And so they're wrong so often. And so that was a lesson that Rush Limbaugh taught me inadvertently. But I really appreciated it. And so, he seems like the guy had a full life, man. It's sad that he's dead, but, I don't know anything about his spiritual status or anything like that, but he seemed like he had a very positive impact on a lot of people. And so it's a very sad thing that he's dead. I mean, death is always a sad thing. But anyway, that's a little story about me and Rush Limbaugh. Nothing, I never got into him, but it wasn't because I didn't like him. Every time I heard him, I liked him. And all of that kind of thing. But yeah, I know a lot of people are pretty disappointed about that. Anyway, so there's that. I wanted to talk about one other thing. I've been listening to a lot of content from a variety of different people about the economy being rigged, people that are kind of socialist. I've been listening to some people like that about how the economy's rigged, and which you don't have to be a socialist to understand that the economy can be rigged in certain ways. But Very similar rhetoric to a lot of the woke church stuff. And I gotta just be honest with you, like, and then combining this with the Gospel Coalition headline, Christians are a bunch of losers. You just should lose well. Like people are saying, well, your eschatology really makes a difference, and it sure does. Like if you go through life, one of the reasons I hate woke church stuff so much is because of the damaging effect it has on the very people that it claims to care about. Like if you go through life and you're taught that the system is rigged, no matter what you do, you'll never be able to get ahead, no matter what, because it's rigged against you, because you're black or because you're poor or because you're Latino or because you're LGBT or whatever it is. Like if you really believe that, that's gonna come across in your actions, right? Like, why would you try to get ahead if the system's rigged against you to get ahead? Like you'll put different effort in if you believe that everyone is out to get you. The system is rigged. You can't get ahead in any of those things. It's just a very different thing when you believe something like that. Or when you believe that the wealth of the pagans, the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. You see, here's the reality, that the system might be rigged, but it doesn't matter if it's rigged, because actually you have to understand that God has rigged the system in a certain way to the benefit of his people. And so we should go after it and get that, because if the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous, and you actually believe that and you go through your life believing that, you're going to make a lot of different plays than if you believe that you're screwed no matter what you do. If you think you're just a loser and you're supposed to be a loser, so your focus is not really on winning, it's on losing well. If that's your focus, then you're going to hit what you aim for. And so you're going to make very different moves thinking that you're a loser, you'll always be a loser, and we just have to focus on losing well. If that's what you believe, you're going to make a lot different moves. And I think that this is something that Christians need to reject completely. They need to reject being a bunch of whiners. They need to reject being a bunch of losers, really, is what it is. We need to win, because you see, the thing is, we have Christ on our side, right? So what if Christ is for us, who can be against us? So people that are trying to rig the economy to their advantage are against us. Well, okay, you might have some capital, you might have a lot of friends and stuff like that in high places, but I have a friend in the ultimately high place. Christ is for us. So if all the pagans are banding together and trying to cast the bonds of Christ apart, they're trying to reject Christ, they're trying to rebel against his rule and stuff like that. That's cute. That's cute, but we can still make progress because our God is the King of Kings. He's the Lord of Lords. He's on our side. So what's the problem here? Like, why are we focused on losing well if we're more than conquerors? So if Christ is on the throne, right, and we're ruling and reigning with Christ, why are we focused on losing well? Should we not be focused on winning? Should we not be focused on obeying Christ and taking ground for Christ, kicking down the gates of hell? Should we not be focused on those things? It doesn't make any sense at all. Should we not be focused on the realities that God has presented to us, that wealth gained hastily will soon go away, but those who gather little by little by little are going to make progress? Should we not be focused on the reality that the kingdom of God is like leaven and it spreads through the whole lump and it kind of goes progressively and things like that? Should we not be focused on making moves now that will set our children and our children's children up for more success in the future? Like, that's the kinds of things we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on building, because if the wealth of the righteous, of the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous, that's all encompassing. That's not just spiritual wealth. That's all kinds of wealth. That's all the infrastructure. That's all the financial services. That's all the land and everything. It's all Christ's, right? So we shouldn't give any of it up for the pagans to take advantage of. None of it. They're doing it in an illegitimate way. Like, if anything that the pagans own, that's ours. We got to get that. We got to get that. And we got to get that according to Christ's principles, right? We got to get that according to Christ's commands and stuff like that. We can't just steal it. We can't just do whatever we want. We have to do it according to Christ's way because he's our Lord. He's our master. He decides what's what. But that's the kind of thing we should be focused on. So seriously, like if you want your kids to lose, tell them that they're losers. Right? Okay, they'll definitely lose because they're going to act differently knowing that they're a loser. Like the wealth of the wicked is not really for them because they're a loser, right? If you want your kids to act as if they can't get ahead, then tell them they can't get ahead. Tell them that everything's rigged against them, and that when everything's rigged against you, I guess the powers of the world have won. They were able to do it. I know that Christ is your king, and Christ says that he's on your side, but that he's no match for so-and-so financial conglomerates over here, I guess. See, that's preposterous. I refuse to teach that kind of nonsense, and it's like that's one of my big concerns with the woke church because there's really not a lot of solutions in the woke church. It's all complaining. It's all the system's rigged. Oh, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. Give me some money if you feel sorry for me kind of thing. You're never going to get ahead that way. You're never going to get ahead that way. If you think the system is rigged, then what you need to simultaneously do, unless you're going to be one of these people that's just going to beat the woke church into submission, essentially, to keep them in slavery always, then you have to start presenting options for how to get out of how to work within this rigged system in order to better yourselves, because there are ways. And so the woke church, until they become more solutions oriented, and I mean solutions according to God's law and God's commands, they're always just going to hold down the very people that they aim to help. They're always going to keep them in a state of slavery and submission all the time. That's why I'm against so much of that kind of stuff. That mindset of just we're losers, woe is me, let's lose well, this and that, give me money, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to end up anywhere good because it's not God's way. It does not take seriously the reality that God's on our side. God has told us that he's going to give the church and the kingdom of God all the resources that they need and all of the success that he decides to give them. And it's not just spiritual success. It is spiritual success, but it's all encompassing. There's no question about it. You read the book of Revelation, you read Deuteronomy and all these kinds of things. It's total. He's given us it all for his inheritance, and we need to live and act in a way that actually believes that, instead of just kind of like uses as rhetoric. Well, yeah, he's the King of Kings, he's the Lord of Lords. Yeah, we're more than conquerors. Yeah, we're ruling and reigning with him, but like not really. Not like a real king. I don't know. Anyway, I know that was a little bit scattered, but that is what it is. I hope you found this podcast helpful. God bless. Don't forget to tune in next week on Thursday for AD on the Fight Laugh Feast Network.